Hi, Rachel. I'm Rowan. Thank you for accepting our invite to interview you. It's
I'm very
a
happy to. Yes.
it's an honor
Thank you.
to really interview you because you have done so many tarot books, as well as done so many write-ups on some of the more prominent decks like Salvador Dali's deck, Shining
Yeah.
Blade Child Tarot deck,
Tribe. Yeah.
Tribe
Yeah.
Tarot deck, and also the Heidel
Yeah.
Heidel
Yes.
Tarot
Yeah.
deck. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're a very prominent writer.
Thank you.
So uh, the first question, what got you involved in tarot in the first place?
Well, I was teaching college at a very cold place. And one of the teachers said to me if I gave her a ride home, that she would read my tarot cards. So I thought that sounded like fun. I knew nothing about them. I'd seen them in poetry sometimes. And so I remember nothing of the readings she gave me except how wonderful the cards were. They were so beautiful and mysterious. And I loved that there was a book that came with them. It was Eden Gray was the author back in the around 1970 or so. And what was interesting was that the descriptions were just as mysterious as the cards. Um,
Yes.
and so it just seemed to open up all these worlds and all these stories. And I became just captivated. And at that time, was about a year or so before it started to become very popular, before the big edition was launched from US Games that we all know today. So it was very hard to find. So I had to go all around the area. I was near Canada, so I went up to Montreal. In Canada, I went down to New York City, and I finally found some and just started doing readings. No one told me I had to study anything. I got the
That's
cards, I got a
true.
book, and that's all I needed. And so and also a willingness to make up stories.
Yeah.
Who these
I
people were, what they were doing,
mm,
what were the
uh,
secret stories
yeah.
behind them.
Yes. Yeah, I understand. So, of all the tarot decks which you have seen currently in the market and
Mhm.
through your years, which were the few tarot decks which you have strong attachment to?
Oh, it's such a difficult question always. Well, first of all, of course, there's the deck idea, the Shining Tribe deck, which obviously is very meaningful to me. And then the Rider deck remains always very, very central to me. The last few years, I've become very aware that we never get to the end of it. There's always new layers of meaning in those pictures. And something I love very much about the cards and Pamela Smith's drawings is that the expressions on the faces are very often, they're not blank, they're not like empty, but what their expressions are, we cannot say for certain. So different people will see very different people in the cards. Um, for instance, the Seven of Pentacles, a man leaning on his stick and looking at the bush with the pentacles on it. I always say to people, what is this man feeling? What's his expression? And they'll say, he's very satisfied, he's very unhappy, he's taking a nice break from his work, he's thinking, oh my God, there's so much work to do, and on and on and on. And so this illuminates um, the person getting the reading. It says something about them that that's what they see. And that's a remarkable quality that very few tarot decks have. In fact, so many modern tarot decks are based upon the Rider deck, but they always seem to think it's important to give a very clear expression.
Ah, yeah, that's
They don't
true.
seem to understand it's actually better not to, so then the person getting the reading can see something
Oh,
rather than be
yes.
told something. So there's always the Rider deck, always. And then um, I remain very loyal in the sense of the Heindel Tarot from my work with Herman Heindel. I haven't used it that much in recent years.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I've done several things with Robert Place.
Hmm.
The Raziel Tarot we did together. We did
Yes.
a Lenormand deck called the Burning Serpent Oracle, and I love his work in general. I actually have one of his decks right here. Yeah, the sort of Sevenfold Mystery deck that he did,
Ah,
and
yes.
he did the
It's
Alchemical.
a
Yeah,
very
yeah,
interesting deck.
yeah. He did the Alchemical Tarot, he's most known for. So I like that a lot. And then there's so many. It's hard to, new ones come out all the time.
Yes.
And I'm interested for a while, then I kind of forget them and come back to them. So I don't know if you've seen a deck called Dust to Onyx.
Oh,
It's African American based deck. Beautiful paintings, just gorgeous paintings. And I recently rediscovered it after not having looked at it for a while. So I'm very taken with that. Um, there's all sorts of wonderful things. And then there's people doing new paintings of the Rider deck.
yes.
James Rickleffe, who's one of my favorite artists, he did a Tarot of the Masters, I think, which he found
Yeah,
old paintings that look
right,
like the tarot cards, and then he
right.
repainted them himself.
Yes.
So they weren't
James,
just
I was just speaking to James like 2 days ago.
how nice, yeah.
Also
And
for the magazine as well,
yeah,
but he's a very nice guy. Yes.
yeah. And have you seen this new deck he's done? He recolored the Rider cards. I
Yes,
forget what he
yes,
calls them. It's
yes.
gorgeous. It's just really beautiful,
Yeah. He also did doing one on the Marcel Tarot
Yes,
recently.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Majors only.
Yeah.
I was asking him whether he will do the minors. He said he needs some thought because
Yeah,
his idea is because Marcel's Tarot don't have,
yeah.
imagery of the rider, as well
Oh,
as it's all in pipes. So he
well,
says he needs some thought before he goes into it, actually, which is
this,
I think is a good
I agree.
thing. Yeah.
There's a recent deck called it's only in French. It's called Tarot de Marseille. Wait, so it's a redrawing of the Marseille cards in a very lively kind of modern, almost cartoon-like fashion that I like a lot. And then they also redraw the minor arcana in the style of Pamela Smith. So you have the traditional French major arcana, and then you have the Pamela Smith minor arcana, but it's done by the same artist. So there's a continuity of expression because the same artist is doing both parts. And I like
Right.
that one a lot too.
Another deck which I think you also put in a lot of effort in is a deck which I personally like a lot. The
Mhm.
Vertigo Tarot.
Oh, Vertigo.
Vertigo.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was so much
Yes.
fun.
It's I think because of your work with DC Comics as
Mhm.
well,
Yeah, yeah,
on Doom Patrol,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it is what's your view on the Vertigo Tarot?
Well, what was interesting so the idea was someone who worked at Vertigo comic books, um, and she was a tarot person. And it occurred to her that they have so many great stories and great characters, they could make a tarot deck using their characters. So um, she suggested it to the chief editor. The chief editor liked the idea and contacted me and Neil Gaiman, who did the Sandman comic book for Vertigo, and their biggest seller, of course. And wonderful, wonderful work, the Sandman. And so DC Comics put all of us in a hotel for a weekend,
Oh,
which was so much fun. And we just spent the weekend talking about what each card would be. And so we came up with 22 major arcana cards. And then the artist is a man named Dave McKean, who was Neil Gaiman's original partner when Neil Gaiman first started doing comics art. And so Dave did these beautiful pictures, as you know, because you know the deck. And I did the book, and it was just a great one to do. It was really fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like the I think the style of his art as well as
Yeah.
is not like what you said. It's not very specific. You can get a lot
Yeah.
of different layers
Yeah. Yeah.
just looking at the deck over and over again. And
Yeah.
as time progresses, different stage of my life, when I look at the deck, I get a different view of
Yeah.
the deck as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a wonderful deck to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
when
want to
you,
mention also a couple other decks that I worked on.
Mhm.
In particular, the Brady Tarot. Emmy Brady's
Mm.
the artist, and beautiful, beautiful lino cuts, like the old woodcuts from traditional tarot decks. And it's all about the animals and plants of North America
Oh,
with some of the native traditions, but not the people. So it's all animals and plants, and it's just wonderful. And I learned so much doing that book because she told me what her ideas were for every card. And one of the things I learned that's really had a big impact on me was I always did feel that there wasn't that much difference between human beings and animals, you know? And always sometimes when people would say, well, what's the big difference between human beings and animals? And I would say nothing. But she just so convinced me. For instance, did you know that animals can be drug addicts?
yes.
It's the kind of deer that gets addicted to a plant growing on the side of rocks.
Mm.
and it will endanger its life to just get more, just keep doing this, keep licking this plant off, because it gets so high, it gets addicted to it. And blue jay is a kind of bird in America. They have funerals. If a blue jay dies, another blue jay sees it, it comes down and it sends off this call, this song that's only for a dead blue jay. And
Mm.
any blue jays who hear it come around, they all get in a circle around their dead bird, and they just sing the song in honor of the dead bird. So it's a blue jay funeral. So that was a great one to work on. Yeah,
Mm.
there's so many wonderful tarot decks, so many great things.
Yeah, and the more are created every day, as well as because of trying to present different concepts as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
One idea is because of the turn of the century, there's also a lot of changes in gender equality and stuff like that. I can see that there's a lot of more female tarot readers as compared to
yeah.
the male artists. What's your view on the transformation?
Well, there was always a great, tarot reading was always pretty much a female profession, at least in America and Europe for the most part. Um, and so it's really funny if you go to a conference and there's 100 people present, there may be 5 or 6 men, maybe a little more than that, but not too many men. Um, but traditionally, the men were the scholars and the intellectuals, and so that all this has changed. So now, there are many more male readers and many more women doing scholarship and intellectual ways of looking at it. And so, Mary Greer was a great pioneer in that. And Mary's always tended to have both qualities. And what I mean by that is that um, her her way of dealing with the cards is very much kind of emotional connection to the cards and to the people getting the readings. But she also is a great scholar and an intellectual and very intellectually serious too. So she has those both sides that we tend to think of as more feminine, more masculine. And Mary's a very feminine woman, but she nevertheless has that side that our culture would have said previously was men do that, very intellectual and scholarly. Um, and I find it quite wonderful to have watched in recent years this development that people who it used to be there was a kind of war between the historians and the tarot readers. The historians are always trying to say, "Oh, this is all nonsense. All these things that people come up with." The tarot readers would say, "Oh, well, what you're saying, you're just denying this great spiritual truth," or something like this. And then at a certain point, people like Mary and Robert Place became scholars and historians, and they started to base their meanings interpretations on history and images, and not just on the modern esoteric traditions. And I think that's very wonderful. Um, but also, one of the great things about our time is that tarot decks. One of the great things about this period is like a revolution, and it's Kickstarter. The ability for one person or a couple of people to make a tarot deck to raise enough money to publish it on their own and not have to go to a publisher. Because it doesn't actually take that much to be able to publish a small edition of a tarot deck and make enough money to make it worth your while, you know? Um, and so what happens is all these great new things coming out, really daring stuff. And one of them is um, people doing tarot decks with imagery that is not limited to the traditional European style, cultures all over the world, but also is not limited in male and female symbolism. So you have female magicians and um, and I'm not sure how they would do a male priestess, but there's some way in which they would do a male version of the priestess and so forth.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and the queens can be men, and
Mm.
the kings and knights can be women, and so forth. And so it's very much freeing. And there's African decks and there's Asian decks, and decks from all over the world and different traditions. And so this is a very, very exciting time. It breaks down a lot of barriers. There's decks of people of all body types.
Mm.
So there's transgender people and gender fluid people and people you can't tell what they are.
Yeah.
Then you have people in wheelchairs and people are very fat and people are very skinny. And so gone is the idea that everybody has to look the same.
Mm.
And and
That, that,
people who are different, you can't see them. So
Mm,
this is a wonderful thing that's happening. It's very, very exciting to see that.
yeah.
And it's because of the internet, because of this idea that people can come
And
together
and
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 produce.
and also the internet connects people. That's why
Yeah,
I'm able to talk to you like
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
miles away. And yeah,
exactly. And we were able to first meet on Facebook.
yes, correct,
And so
correct, yes,
we talked on Facebook and we got together and decided to do this, and here we are doing it, on the other
yeah,
side of the world,
correct, correct.
12-hour
And
difference.
yes, yes, and I agree. The Kickstarter project did help me with my tarot, which I give you a copy. Or of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
the art which is presented may not be to your liking, but that's how we wanted to present it.
No, it's very good. Actually, I have a difficulty with decks that use lots of artists. Because always there's some artists I like, some artists I don't like. And so it's a little, even when it's just two or three artists, there'll be such a difference sometimes.
No,
And
understood.
so that was my only question with
Yeah.
with the deck is, but I love the project, that
Oh, thank you,
we're
thank you.
putting these different cultures together.
It's because for my region, it's Southeast Asia. It's
Mhm.
a country, or it's a region of 11 nations, and
Mhm.
all of different type of religion,
Yeah,
different
yeah.
type of governments. We have like a monarchy here.
Mhm.
uh, Brunei is a monarchy still. It's one of the few monarchies in
Yeah,
the
wow.
world.
And Thailand, is Thailand still a monarchy?
Thailand is a democracy,
It
but
is okay.
it's also it's sort of have very strong difference to the monarch, because
Okay. Yeah,
they
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's like
yes,
England, sort of a
yes,
constitutional
yeah.
monarchy.
But
Yeah.
because the last king of Thailand, which is Rama the Ninth, is a very great king. So
Hmm.
he used a lot of his wealth to develop things for the common man. So
Wow.
every
That
common man, yes.
mhm.
uh,
That's not like England.
no, it's
The
not like England.
English royal family spends nothing on anybody else, as
No,
far as I can tell. Anyway,
so
go on with what
so
you were saying about Thailand. Yeah.
just giving you some background on the
Yeah.
Thai king is
Yeah. Yeah.
because he is a person who was not supposed to be king in the first place.
I see.
So when he became a king, he connected very well with the common people. He actually went down to the farmers and understand their problem. And also, instead of just giving lip service saying, oh, I will help you or what, he actually went down, designed irrigations for the
Mm,
places, and he
wonderful.
implemented it. So that's why the Thai people have very great respect for this Thai king. And when he
Yeah.
speaks, although he's not the government, when he
Hmm.
speaks, people will listen to him, because when you do something of influence or something to help the common man,
Hmm.
everybody will support
Yeah.
him. So
Yeah.
it's also like our former prime minister, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. He did a lot for the
Yeah.
people of
Yeah.
the country. So
Uh-huh.
in a way, it's a very strong indication of the various governments here. And of course
Hmm.
now we have some issue with Myanmar, the military coup and stuff like that. So
Okay. Mm.
uh, in the
Yeah. Yeah.
course of
Yeah.
me doing the deck, there was a lot of challenge as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so your what's your view of the next transformation type of tarot? Would it be like totally different from the traditional cards, or
Somehow I don't think so, because I think people love the tradition. I think when people try to do something different, they add extra cards, they take out cards. People don't like it. They want something that they can connect to. I have to say that my Shining Tribe deck suffered from being too different for many people. Um, and I would teach a class, and I'd have a card that showed a woman resting on the side of a mountain while a bird comes to her, you know, and it was the four birds. And and so they would say, well, what is that in the traditional deck? And I would say the four swords, which shows a knight resting on a stone kind of thing. Um, so they would start interpreting that card and not the picture that was in front of them, which was very frustrating to me. So I don't think people get very far when they go too far away from the tradition.
Mm.
Um, but we'll see. I mean, one of the great things I think about tarot is it's always surprising us. It's, you know, when the internet first came in and computers, there were all these people, all these questions like, well, what will tarot be like on the internet? And most people, what they came up with was many more readings online, and that was what they came up with. They didn't realize social media would make this huge, huge difference. That people who love tarot from all over the world would be able to get together and share things. And before
Connect,
Facebook,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that was a huge change. I mean, that was fascinating development.
And also COVID also changed a lot of things as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it's always hard to predict what will happen
Mm.
because we don't really know what will next step will be in, say, technology. We can have ideas, but we don't really know because something may came out of nowhere. Like the iPhone. Before Steve Jobs, people had cell phones, mobile phones, and they had no idea that you would ever be able to do anything other than speak on it.
Yes.
And then suddenly Steve Jobs announced this phone, which was connected to the internet and could do all these different things. And the big joke was people would say to him, well, Mr. Jobs, how do you make a phone call? He'd go, a phone call? It was like he's forgotten to do that. He's forgotten to. But
Agree.
no one had any thoughts about something like that. And now, of course, it's taken over the world, and people live their lives connected to it. So I think I love the idea that things will surprise us. Even though you could say there's a tarot reader, I should be predicting things. I'd just as soon be surprised on that kind of level.
And another view which a lot of people think is tarot connects people is like it's a language which perhaps two people from different nations may
Yeah,
not understand each other, but by looking at the image, they can
yeah.
instantly connect. Do you have the same views on this type of feeling? Because I guess pictures do connect people.
Yeah, I think that if the people don't have any common background in tarot, they would be likely to either have no reaction to the pictures or interpret them in very different ways. So you
Mm.
don't know if they'd be able to really communicate. There's a wonderful novel called The Castle of Crossed Destinies by an Italian writer, Italo Calvino. And in it, a group of people are stranded in a castle somewhere, and for some reason they can't speak. It's like a magic spell, but they have a set of tarot cards, the original Visconti Sforza tarot deck. So each one in turn turns over some cards. And then the narrator says what story that they're telling by turning over the cards. Um, and when I showed this to some students of mine, writing students, they said, well, but how does anyone know that he's right, the narrator? Maybe those people aren't telling a story at all. Maybe they're just wondering what the pictures are. Or maybe they're telling a different story. They said, yes. I said, well, that's the point of it. It's like, we don't actually know without people
That's
being able to speak
Yeah,
speak
that's the
to.
view of probably oracle or tarot or any form
Yeah,
of divination, uh, because
yeah,
there's just so many forms, and especially nowadays, there's like Kipper, there's like
yeah,
Lenormand,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
so many different forms, and more forms are coming into the market every day. But
yeah.
I guess traditional tarot is still strongly uh, ingrained in everybody because the system and the justification, there's so much history within it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And it's so deep in symbolism and meaning, and like there's so much history, and the history includes spiritual traditions and like gods and goddesses and Kabbalah, and mysticism. It's so much. And so I always say that any oracle system will tell us something, but the tarot has all this great, great knowledge in it. So what the tarot will tell us is backed up by a lot of else besides just a prediction,
hmm, yes,
which is very wonderful.
yeah, that's why when I started tarot, I fell in love with it immediately. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. For what's your view on the Golden Dawn tradition as compared to how a Marcel tarot deck is being used? Do
Yeah.
you feel that there's any conflict, or is there like a common ground in which?
I think to me, there's a lot of common ground, but there's a lot of conflict. The conflict comes from people on both sides
Mm,
who are very much in their minds about our system is the true one, everybody else is wrong. It becomes like a religious doctrine, you know. And one time I was in Paris and I was having dinner with a book editor, publisher, and so he said to me, he said, "Well, I know that you Americans in England, you like the Rider deck, but I would say here in France we believe that the only true tarot is the Marseille tradition." And he was waiting for me to get angry, you see, and argue. And I said, well, I can see that point of view. That makes a lot of sense. I understand why you would say that. He goes, no, no, no. You're supposed to defend the Rider deck because he was Parisian, He wanted
mm,
to have a fight, an argument.
yeah.
um, and to me, I have never really been drawn to the whole idea that tarot is it's a set doctrine of symbolic ideas, and there's only one right way to do it. I mean, to me, it's always a living, breathing, changing thing.
Mm,
And so I like it that there's all these different ways. And but I understand if it's like the periodic table of the elements in chemistry. Um,
mm,
you can't decide that, helium should come first before hydrogen.
mm,
It's not up to you, you know? Hydrogen has to be first, helium has to be second, and so on, It's not up to us to decide where they belong. It's a physical reality. Just like you can't decide that that Venus is closer to the sun than Mercury. It's not up to us. This is the world, Um, so, but I don't think tarot is like that. I don't think tarot is that set and definite. Um, but the people who work in those systems, it is to them because they're using it as a kind of memory system. Um, so in the famous memory palaces, you would have an image of a place in your palace, and that image would hold such and such truth. So
mm,
the tarot is like that, So for the Golden Dawn people, the full is the letter Aleph in the Hebrew alphabet. The letter Aleph means this. It's this path on the tree of life, and so on and so on and so on. Because this enables them to put everything together
mm,
and to do rituals and spells. So for them, it has to be that way. There's no point to it being an open question because that's how it works. It works by having everything be organized. And I'm
mm,
just not like that. I mean, to me, it's my preference always is for stories over doctrines and images over the sense symbols. So to me,
fair
it's
enough.
always a living thing. It's always opening
Mm,
up and always doing new things. So I like that. You know, I like that people are bringing them together. I like that Marseille weight
mm,
deck.
yeah.
Um, I recently was to the honor of doing a little essay to go with the deck by Leonora Carrington, who was a great surrealist painter and writer
Mm,
from the sort of mid 20th century or so.
mm,
And no one knew she had done a tarot deck. And suddenly, just not many years ago, it was discovered. And a friend of mine is a scholar on Carrington, so she did a big book on it. And she told the publisher, you need Rachel Pollack to do something. So he contacted me and I did this essay. And I love it because it's very sly. It's just very fun, that deck, the
mm,
Carrington Tarot. She didn't ever mean to be a publisher. She never said to a publisher. It was just discovered among her papers. But what she does is she combines images from the Marseille and the Waite in her major arcana. So it's actually very funny in some ways.
mm,
It's like, sort of mixing them together and blending them, which no one had ever done. And, you know, she was a follower of Andre Breton, who was a very famous surrealist painter. And also, um, I can't remember now, is the filmmaker Hodorowski. Hodorowski did this new version of the Marseille deck. It's very beautiful. It's very bright colors. He and Camwan, who did the art, I think. Anyway,
mm,
but Hodorowski says the story when he was young, um, um, and Breton was old, but he was still alive and important. So he went to see Breton, and um, and Hodorowski said, "Look, I have this tarot deck," and it was the Rider deck. He said Breton grabbed and threw it in the garbage. He said, "You must get the Marseille deck. That is the only true tarot deck."
Yeah. And
So that was the attitude,
yeah.
back then.
Even what's your view of the Sola Busca tarot?
I want at some point to spend some serious time studying it. I think it's beautiful. I think it's hard to understand because even the people who study historically, they don't know who all these people are.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these things. Most of the cards are named for someone, and not every name is known to us anymore.
It's a very deep deck. Yeah.
It's deep. It's beautiful, and I don't know. I know there are these people who claim to have unlocked the symbolic system. Some people say it's alchemy,
Mhm.
and I had not studied what they've done, so I don't know how convincing it is.
Like Giordano Berti.
Yeah, he did one, and there was a really beautiful big book that was done.
Mhm.
I forget who did it. Might have been Giordano Berti. And then there have been these deluxe editions, that I have one of those, and it's just beautiful, And
Yeah,
one
it
of these years,
takes
I will take the time to really study it deeply.
more study because a lot of people say the Three of Swords from that deck was the
Oh yeah,
inspiration for Rider
yes,
White, and for
and the
some
Ten of
reason,
Wands also
no,
carrying the six. Yeah.
the Ten of Swords in the Sola Busca tarot
Oh, that
is,
too. Okay.
yes,
Was-
is because when I posted the Sola Busca
Okay.
images
Yeah.
online, so
Yeah.
people were asking me, isn't this the Ten of Wands instead of
Mm,
Ten of Swords? I said, no, this is the Ten of Swords as per the Sola Busca tarot. Then it
okay.
was like it's like blown their minds. They were saying that, no, they were trying to argue with me.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
be, I said, what I present is what is given. I'm not, yeah. So it's endless in those arguments. Even for like Seven of Swords, that you can find a lot of imagery which is brought towards the Rider White, which I think is also interesting because
Yeah.
it gives a link between the two decks, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it involves more understanding and sharing. Like what you said, tarot can be connecting different
Yeah.
traditions in
Yeah.
different points in time, because the Solar Busca is probably 14th century, and
Yeah. It's
Pollock,
1491.
yeah, both of them,
1491.
correct,
Just 40 years after the first Visconti Sports deck.
correct.
Very,
So
very, very early. The
yes,
Rider
so
deck is 1910. So it's like,
yeah,
what, 400 years later.
yeah.
So
So
to say the Rider
so
deck is true and the Solar Busca is wrong is ridiculous, obviously.
but the connection is
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's like a poetry. Perhaps
yeah,
we write a book, your book, maybe 100 years down the line, they may have a different interpretation of maybe your
yes,
78 degrees of wisdom as
yeah,
compared to what they feel at that point in
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Because like what you said, nobody understands what's the why we have this iPhone and stuff like that
yeah.
now. Yeah, if you were to go back maybe 100 years later before, you just say, oh, there's going to be this iPhone and stuff like that. People say it's ridiculous, you cannot store so
Not
many.
even that far back, just maybe 25 years.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I recently was like reading some story or something, and I was amazed at how recent it was that we didn't have these kind of phones. They didn't exist.
Agree,
You know,
agree.
yeah, and even just mobile phones didn't exist more than what 25, 30 years ago.
Hmm.
Maybe
but
maybe they were starting to. Yeah, 30
but
years ago
we,
they were
we
starting
had
to. Yeah,
also some people with stories like George Orwell's 1980.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
84. Yeah,
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 he was one of the first few to write something like the internet,
yeah.
or a
Well, that's
web
true.
which connects people all around the world. So I was also quite impressed by his writing, because he's a 18th century person, or early,
George Orwell? No,
yeah.
George Orwell was writing at the time he sets the stories. He's mid 20th century, around the
So
world, a little before World War II and a little bit after. Yeah.
um, so he's just like like what we tarot readers are doing, predicting
Yeah.
future.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, what his major book, 1984, he actually wanted to call it 1948, which is the year he wrote it. But the publisher said, no, 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 that's too upsetting. So they called it 1984.
Hmm.
Um, but it's a very upsetting book because it's based on Stalin, of course, but also it predicts certain things. It predicts like in North Korea, where you
Mm,
have to have these radios and you can't turn them off,
mm,
and the leader comes on and just starts screaming at you, and you can't shut it off.
mm.
And he predicted that. That's what happens in 1984.
So what's your view on Carl Jung's theory and linking it to mysticism and tarot and stuff like that?
Hmm.
Jungian
Well,
theory.
I like I love Jung's whole emphasis on images and on like sort of levels and levels of understanding and images. I find sometimes he can be a bit rigid, like anyone from that period. Um, so and sometimes he can be very sexist also. And what I'm saying is, so he took a big advance to say that men had a feminine soul energy and women had a masculine soul energy. So men had an anima and women had animus. But he would not allow that energy could be strong and maybe be dominant in the person.
Mhm.
So, for instance, he saw lesbians as that their male soul was too powerful, and it made them distorted. They weren't proper women anymore. So things like that. But that was his time. Uh, and he was beyond a lot of other people at that time. And some of what he did was truly wonderful. The whole opening of images and the connecting of images from all over the world to people's dreams and personal stories was phenomenal.
Yeah. I think his work, and you can explain a lot of tarot also based on his works as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like also the whole idea of these images that are worldwide. So, for instance, the pure eternus, the eternal child, and the senex, the old man. So that's the fool and the hermit. And so you can understand those in terms of Jung. But I would say also you can understand Jung in terms of those tarot cards. I think it should go both ways. Because if you only do it, Jung explaining the tarot cards, you end up with an intellectual explanation of the pictures.
Yes.
But if it goes both ways, the picture brings what Jung says to life in a different kind of way as well.
Yeah. What projects would you be working on maybe for 2020 onwards?
Yeah. Well, I just actually finished two things. One is a 5-issue comic book called The Never Ending Party, which is going to be online in a couple months later, I hope. And that was great fun to do. I co-wrote it with someone. We had a great time. And then the other one is a novel, a short novel about a girl who gets a magic fountain pen, and it becomes this very dangerous thing. She has to deal with that. Um, and I'm also writing, my current big project is a memoir, sort of autobiography. It's called Along the Way I Told a Tale, My Life in Tarot, Storytelling, and Magic.
Oh.
So it's very much my personal story on many levels. And that's been a very, very exciting thing to do and very scary because I tell some wild stories and it's very intense in places and I have no idea what will happen when people will like it or not like it. But if you're a writer, you have to do what you have to do. You have to do the writing, the story that's in you and needs to be told. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Look forward
it's
to those stories.
yeah. There's a couple of tarot decks that I might be doing the book for. It's up in the air. One is a new Emmy Brady deck. So she's done North America. The next deck will be Europe.
Mhm.
Be much more mythology and less nature of Europe. She's fascinated by the mythology of old Europe. And then Ellen Lorenzi Prince, who some of your listeners might know from the Dark Goddess Tarot and various other wonderful decks. And so she's doing a Greek goddess deck, and I might do the book for that. So I don't know for sure if those will happen, but if they do, they'll both be really exciting projects to work on.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel, for your time.
Oh,
And
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Rowan. Yeah.
yes, it's inspiring to speak to someone whom I only read in books and comics and stuff. And
Yeah.
really, thank you very much.
Okay.
I hope to see all your new works. And yeah,
Okay.
and
Well, I will now on Facebook, so that's the place. If you keep track of my Facebook page, you'll
mm,
see them. So,
okay, can.
okay.